In the beginning, nobody really noticed. Humanity was busy with its daily lives, struggling with ordinary problems. Climate change, politics, and technology that seemed impressive, but ordinary on the surface. But behind the scenes, a small group of people were working on something entirely different, something that the world would never imagine. They weren't looking for fame or recognition. They didn't care about headlines or awards. They were driven by a simple yet powerful goal: to ensure humanity would survive, no matter what the universe threw at them. It all started quietly, in hidden laboratories, secret research stations, and underground facilities. Scientists, engineers, and thinkers from every corner of the world were recruited in absolute secrecy. Governments and powerful organizations invested in them, not because the public demanded it, but because some leaders had the foresight to see the future. They knew that the Earth was fragile, and that humanity's survival could not depend on a single planet or a single civilization. At first, it was small. A few satellites built beyond normal orbit, capable of moving far faster than anything seen before. Then, secret experiments in propulsion systems, artificial intelligence, and energy sources that could power a city or a fleet of ships for decades without refueling. Every discovery was tested in isolated zones far from prying eyes. Every failure was hidden, every success celebrated only in whispers. The people involved often worked long, lonely hours. They slept in tiny bunk rooms and underground labs, ate simple meals, and spoke mostly through secure communications. There were no fans or admirers. There was no applause when a breakthrough happened. But they believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed they were building not just technology, but a shield for the future of the human race. Soon, the work moved beyond Earth. Private and secret space programs built hidden stations, small at first, floating in the dark regions between planets. These stations were more than just labs. They were homes, factories, and strategic bases. Humans could live there for months or years at a time, learning how to survive in environments that were harsh, cold, and hostile. Every mission was dangerous. Every launch carried risks that could easily end in disaster. Yet the teams continued quietly, almost obsessively. The technology they developed was astounding, even if no one outside the circle knew about it. Ships that could travel thousands of times faster than anything publicly reported. Artificial intelligence that could think and adapt faster than any human mind. Weapon systems designed not for aggression, but for defense, so humanity could protect itself if ever discovered. It was a level of preparation that seemed almost impossible for ordinary people to imagine. As the years passed, the scope of the project grew. Hidden factories were built on the far side of the moon, disguised as mining operations. Asteroids were turned into raw material sources. Entire networks of supply and communication were established far from Earth's gaze. Humanity was quietly building an empire in space, an empire no one was supposed to know about. And yet it wasn't about power or conquest. It was about survival. About making sure that if disaster came, whether from natural events, cosmic threats, or hostile civilizations, humans would have a place to continue. Not everyone involved fully understood the scale of what they were creating. Many were focused on the part they could see, the station they worked on, the ship they helped design, or the experiment they ran in a lab. But gradually the pieces began to connect. Small victories in propulsion technology led to larger successes in long-range communication. Advances in energy led to new life support systems that allowed humans to stay in space for longer periods. And every tiny achievement, every unnoticed breakthrough, added up to something much bigger than anyone had imagined. Despite the secrecy, there were whispers outside the walls. Unexplained satellite movements, strange signals picked up by amateur astronomers, and rumors of launches no government officially reported. But these were quickly dismissed by the general public as mistakes, glitches, or conspiracy theories. Humanity outside the program never suspected how deep the project had gone, how far humans had already reached, and how much power they quietly commanded in the shadows. The people working in the shadows understood the risks. If the truth ever came out before humanity was ready, it could trigger panic, international conflict, or even attack from civilizations far more advanced than humans. That's why everything was compartmentalized. One group would know about a new propulsion system, another about a hidden outpost, another about energy sources. Only a handful of leaders and coordinators knew the full picture. And yet, for all the secrecy, there was a strong sense of community. People in the hidden empire cared for each other like family. They celebrated small victories, supported each other during failures, and shared dreams of a future where humans could thrive beyond Earth. There was no hierarchy of fame. Everyone, from the newest engineer to the most experienced strategist, knew that their work mattered because it contributed to something bigger than themselves. By the time the world outside began facing new global crises, rising temperatures, political unrest, resource shortages, the hidden empire was already preparing for the future. Ships capable of leaving Earth's orbit for months at a time were ready. Automated systems could run colonies on distant moons without constant human supervision. And humans trained to survive in the harshest conditions were ready to go wherever they were needed. Yet, despite all this preparation, nobody could predict what would happen next. The Shadow Empire was still hidden, but there were signs that something else in the universe was watching, waiting, and preparing. Humanity's silent work had been a shield against unknown threats, but it could not guarantee that the day would never come when war would reach them. And so, the hidden empire continued to grow, quietly, carefully, with people who understood the importance of patience. Every day brought new challenges, new discoveries, and new tests of human ingenuity. Every person involved knew they were building something extraordinary, even if the world would never know it. They were writing the first chapter of a story that no one outside could yet imagine, a story of survival, of resilience, and of a species quietly preparing to meet the universe on its own terms. The empire in the shadows was not about domination. It was about hope. It was about proving that humanity, when united by vision and courage, could reach beyond the stars. And though no one outside could see it yet, the foundation of something monumental was being laid, a future where humans would stand not just on Earth, but across the galaxy, ready for whatever the universe might bring. By the time the hidden empire had reached a certain size, it was no longer just a collection of secret projects and isolated stations. It had become something much larger, a network of outposts, fleets, and colonies that stretched far beyond the Earth's orbit. Every station and ship, every human and AI system worked together like a living organism. The people inside this empire often called it the silent network, because nobody outside knew it existed. And for good reason. Secrecy was the most valuable asset they had. Life inside the empire was different from anything on Earth. There were no noisy streets, crowded cities, or endless media distractions. Instead, there were control rooms humming with energy, laboratories where the latest discoveries were tested, and observation decks where humans could look out at the endless void of space. Some days were routine, filled with maintenance and monitoring. Other days were unpredictable, as experiments pushed the limits of what humans could achieve. Every person inside the empire knew that what they were doing was important, but few truly understood the scale of it. Ships moved silently between stations, carrying resources, supplies, and personnel. These were not ordinary ships. They were built for efficiency, speed, and endurance. They could travel for months at a time without resupply, navigating through dangerous asteroid fields and unpredictable cosmic phenomena. The people on board were trained not just as engineers or scientists, but as explorers, technicians, and problem solvers. Every crew member had to know how to handle emergencies, from life support failures to unplanned collisions. There was no room for mistakes, because in the cold, dark stretches of space, a small error could mean disaster. Despite the challenges, there was a sense of pride among the people who lived and worked in the hidden empire. They were pioneers, venturing into areas no human had ever reached before. They witnessed sights that most people on Earth could only dream about: distant star clusters, swirling gas clouds, and planets with harsh, alien landscapes. They learned how to adapt to environments that would have been deadly without advanced technology. And every achievement, no matter how small, was a step toward ensuring humanity could survive in the universe. The empire was also a place of learning and innovation. Scientists shared discoveries freely. Engineers experimented with new materials and propulsion systems, and strategists planned for scenarios that seemed almost impossible. Even the artificial intelligence systems were treated as partners rather than tools. They analyzed data, made calculations far beyond human capability, and offered solutions to problems that no one else could solve. It was a collaboration between humans and machines, each relying on the other to push the boundaries of what was possible. As the empire grew, so did its complexity. Systems had to be integrated across hundreds of kilometers of space. Communication networks had to remain secure, fast, and reliable. Supply chains had to anticipate needs months in advance. Every station and ship was part of a delicate balance. If one system failed, it could affect many others. This required constant attention and coordination. People working in different parts of the empire often communicated through secure channels, sometimes in real time, and sometimes delayed by hours due to the vast distances. It was a challenge that tested human patience, skill, and ingenuity every day. Yet even as the empire flourished, there was always a sense of caution. Everyone knew that while humans had grown powerful in secret, the universe was vast and unpredictable. There were civilizations beyond human understanding, and some of them were likely capable of destroying entire planets or fleets in an instant. The empire's leaders understood this and acted carefully. They avoided unnecessary attention, maintained strict security protocols, and ensured that humanity's presence remained hidden as much as possible. Life inside the empire also had a human side. People celebrated birthdays, achievements, and small victories. They shared stories, laughter, and even moments of quiet reflection while staring out into the endless black of space. They formed bonds that were stronger than those on Earth, because survival depended on trust, teamwork, and understanding. Despite the high stakes, these humans found ways to live, to hope, and to create a sense of community in a place that was otherwise cold and empty. The empire had another strength that set it apart: foresight. Leaders and strategists constantly planned for the future, simulating scenarios that might take decades or even centuries to unfold. They studied potential threats, natural disasters, and cosmic events. They trained new generations of humans to understand the importance of secrecy, strategy, and adaptation. Every new recruit was not just a worker, they were a guardian of humanity's future, someone who could contribute to the empire's survival in ways that might never be visible to the rest of the world. Despite the careful planning, there were moments of tension. Systems would fail, unexpected phenomena would appear, and mistakes were inevitable. But each challenge strengthened the empire. Every problem solved made humans more capable and prepared for the unknown. They learned not just how to survive in space, but how to thrive, to adapt, and to think ahead in ways that would be necessary if humanity ever faced an external threat. The empire also developed a moral code. Decisions were guided by the understanding that power was a responsibility. Every action, every experiment, and every mission was weighed against potential consequences. The leaders knew that misuse of the empire's capabilities could be catastrophic. They taught the people under their command that secrecy was not about fear or control, but about protection of the human race, and protection of the future they were building. Over time, the empire became almost like a hidden civilization of its own. It had its own rules, routines, and culture. Children born on space stations learned about the universe differently than those on Earth. Adults adapted to life in isolated environments, developing skills that were unique to space survival. Communities formed, with traditions, celebrations, and even small moments of leisure that reminded everyone of the value of life. It was a human empire in every sense, even though it existed entirely in the shadows. The empire's growth was not without its challenges, however. Resources were finite and spaces vast and unforgiving. Strategic decisions had to be made carefully: which asteroids to mine, which planets to explore, and which technologies to prioritize. Every choice could affect the empire's survival decades into the future. Leaders had to balance ambition with caution, innovation with security, and progress with sustainability. It was a constant balancing act that required intelligence, foresight, and above all, patience. By now, humanity in the shadows had reached a level of self-sufficiency that would have seemed impossible decades earlier. Ships could travel for years without returning to Earth. Stations could operate independently, with automated systems maintaining life support, energy production, and communications. Humans had learned to survive in isolation, in extreme environments, and in constant uncertainty. They had become resilient, adaptable, and ready for whatever the universe might throw at them. And yet, despite all the preparation, there was always a sense of waiting. Humans in the empire knew that their work was not just about exploration or survival. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of space, other civilizations existed. Some might be friendly, some indifferent, and some dangerous. Humanity had to remain cautious, hidden, and prepared. Every new discovery, every advancement brought both opportunity and risk. As decades passed, the empire continued to grow, both in size and in sophistication. Humans had learned to build habitats on moons and asteroids, develop energy systems that could last centuries, and design ships that could survive the most hostile conditions. They had turned the dream of a hidden human empire into a reality, one that was capable of defending itself, thriving independently, and continuing humanity's existence far beyond Earth. Even in the quiet of space, humans never lost their sense of purpose. They remembered why they had started, why they worked in secrecy, and what they hoped to achieve. They were building something extraordinary, not just a hidden empire, but a future where humans could survive, explore, and ultimately become a part of a much larger universe. And though the rest of the world had no idea what was happening, the people inside the empire knew that they were on the verge of something historic, something that might one day change the course of human history forever. The empire in the shadows was no longer just a project or a dream. It was a living, breathing human civilization, filled with hope, ingenuity, and determination. And though they did not know it yet, the empire's greatest test had not come from the challenges of space, technology, or survival. It would come from something far more immediate, something that would expose humanity to the rest of the universe in ways they had never imagined. But for now, the empire thrived in silence. It continued to grow, to learn, and to prepare. Every person, every system, and every station was part of a story that had only just begun. A story of humanity reaching beyond its home planet, quietly building a future where it could survive, adapt, and thrive in the vast, unpredictable universe. Even though humanity's empire had grown stronger and more sophisticated, the people within it knew that peace and secrecy could never last forever. Space was vast and unpredictable, and the universe had a way of revealing itself when least expected. The first signs of a potential threat came quietly, almost like a whisper in the darkness. Sensors picked up unusual movements in the outer regions of explored space. Objects appeared that did not match any known celestial patterns, and energy signatures suggested advanced technology, far beyond what humanity had encountered before. At first, the reports were puzzling. Was it a natural phenomenon? A new type of star or comet behaving strangely? Or was it something artificial, something intelligent? Scientists and analysts pored over the data, trying to make sense of it. Every reading, every signal was scrutinized multiple times. The slightest anomaly could be a warning, a precursor to something far more dangerous. And slowly, the team began to realize that this was no ordinary cosmic event. Something or someone was out there, observing, testing, and perhaps preparing to act. The initial reactions among the empire's leaders were cautious but calculated. They could not afford to panic, but they also could not ignore the signs. Small fleets were dispatched quietly to investigate, equipped with the latest technology and trained crews ready for any scenario. Drones and automated probes were sent ahead to map the unknown objects, while the main fleets remained hidden, prepared to respond if necessary. Every move had to be precise because a single misstep could reveal the Empire's presence to whatever was out there. As the investigation continued, it became clear that the strange movements were not random. Advanced calculations suggested that a civilization capable of moving massive fleets through space was nearby, or at least passing through regions where the Empire had established colonies. The intelligence gathered indicated that this civilization could detect hidden structures, analyze energy outputs, and track movement over vast distances. In other words, humanity was no longer alone, and they were no longer invisible. The revelation caused tension across the Empire. People who had worked for decades in the quiet shadows suddenly faced the reality that their hidden civilization was at risk of exposure. Crew members and scientists who had never thought much about the outside universe now understood that a confrontation might be inevitable. Discussions moved from curiosity to caution. Training drills were intensified. Emergency protocols were updated. Communication channels were encrypted and secured to levels never attempted before. Every station and fleet prepared for the possibility that they could be discovered at any moment. But life inside the Empire had taught humanity how to handle pressure. Even in the face of uncertainty, People remained focused and disciplined. They relied on teamwork, intuition, and careful planning. Engineers ensured that propulsion systems and defense mechanisms were ready. Scientists ran simulations to predict enemy behavior and calculate optimal responses. Strategists planned for scenarios ranging from peaceful first contact to all-out conflict. Humans in the Empire had learned that preparation and patience were as important as courage, and now those lessons were put to the test. Meanwhile, the civilians, those living on outposts, moons, and orbital stations, continued their routines, largely unaware of the growing tension. Life went on, even in the cold, silent stretches of space. Children studied advanced sciences, adults performed maintenance, and everyone carried out daily tasks essential for survival. Yet behind the scenes, the leadership closely monitored morale, understanding that fear or panic could undermine everything they had built. Maintaining a sense of normalcy was just as important as strengthening defenses. As the weeks passed, the signs of a potential threat became more evident. Distant fleets were sighted moving with speed and precision, far faster than what humans had seen before. Energy signatures suggested weapons capable of massive destruction. Even more concerning, some of the reconnaissance indicated that the observing civilization was aware of anomalies in their scans, possibly even aware of humanity's hidden infrastructure. It was no longer just a distant curiosity. It was a warning. Humanity had been discovered, or at least their existence was at risk of being revealed. The Empire's leaders faced difficult decisions. Should they remain hidden and risk being detected at a vulnerable moment? Or should they make a show of strength to warn the approaching civilization that humans were not to be underestimated? Every option carried risk. Acting too soon could provoke hostility. Acting too late could lead to disaster. The balance between secrecy, survival, and readiness had never been more delicate. In the midst of these preparations, humans proved their resilience. Teams worked around the clock, repairing ships, recalibrating sensors, and updating communication protocols. Every person, from the youngest technician to the most experienced strategist, contributed in meaningful ways. The Empire's strength did not lie solely in its technology or fleets. It lay in the people, their skill, creativity, and unwavering commitment to protecting humanity. Even in the face of uncertainty, morale remained surprisingly high. People took pride in knowing that their work was vital, that they were part of something historic, and that their efforts could shape the future of the human race. Despite all precautions, there were moments of fear and doubt. Conversations in quiet corners of stations often revolved around the unknown civilization, who they were, what their intentions might be, and whether humans were ready to defend themselves. Some wondered if they were overreacting, while others feared that any delay could be fatal. But ultimately, the shared understanding was clear. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. They had built an empire capable of survival, exploration, and defense. They were ready to face whatever the universe would throw at them. As reconnaissance continued, more data revealed astonishing capabilities of the approaching civilization. Their fleets could coordinate over unimaginable distances. Their technology far surpassed anything previously known, and their strategies suggested intelligence and experience honed over centuries. The discovery was both alarming and enlightening. Humanity had hidden in the shadows for decades, believing that secrecy was their greatest defense. Now they understood that readiness, adaptability, and unity were equally crucial. Small-scale encounters began to occur. Probes from the unknown civilization approached, observing human fleets and colonies. Sensors detected patterns suggesting careful evaluation, almost as if the outsiders were trying to understand humanity without triggering a response. Each encounter was a test, a puzzle that humans had to solve without exposing their full capabilities. Crews and scientists analyzed every signal, energy reading, and anomaly to understand what these unknown forces wanted, and how humans could respond strategically. Even in the face of mounting tension, humanity's empire continued to function smoothly. The hidden civilization proved its strength not just through technology, but through discipline, planning, and the ability to adapt. Humans learned to anticipate, respond, and sometimes even outthink the unknown observers. Small victories, such as successfully concealing fleet movements or avoiding detection of key outposts, boosted morale and reinforced the belief that they could survive any challenge. Yet, the threat remained. Every day brought new anomalies, new signs of observation, and new evidence that the unknown civilization was not passive. Humans had to prepare for multiple scenarios: a peaceful contact, a strategic confrontation, or even an unexpected attack. Every plan required precision, every decision carried consequences, and every human involved understood that their actions could determine the fate of the empire. In the midst of these challenges, a sense of awe persisted. Humans gazed out at the stars, realizing just how vast the universe was, and how small their civilization appeared from an outsider's perspective. Yet the empire they had built in secret was extraordinary. It demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and the determination of a species unwilling to be erased by the unknown. Each individual, whether working on a station, piloting a ship, or analyzing data, felt part of something monumental, a story of humanity quietly preparing to meet the universe on its own terms. The empire's leaders knew that a turning point was approaching. The signs were unmistakable. Reconnaissance was increasing, the unknown fleets were moving closer, and the time for secrecy alone was ending. Humanity had built its empire in the shadows, relying on patience, intelligence, and preparation. Now they were on the verge of being discovered. The empire's strength, built over decades, would soon face its first real test, a test that would determine whether humanity could defend itself, adapt, and survive against forces far greater than anything they had ever encountered. And even as fear and uncertainty loomed, one thing remained constant. Humans had proven that they could work together, innovate, and endure. The silent empire, once hidden and unnoticed, was ready to face its moment of reckoning. The universe had begun to notice them, and humanity had to respond, not with panic, but with strategy, courage, and unity. For the first time, the people of the empire understood that the era of quiet growth and hidden strength was coming to an end. A new chapter was about to begin, one where humanity would step out of the shadows, confront the unknown, and the moment of discovery came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Humanity had spent decades hiding in the shadows, building fleets, stations, and outposts across space. Every ship, every station, and every person had been part of a carefully controlled system designed to remain unseen. Yet despite the careful planning, sensors began to detect something that made even the most seasoned strategists pause: energy patterns and movements that suggested they were no longer invisible. Someone, or something, had noticed them. At first, there was disbelief. Could the empire really have been detected after all this time? Analysts double-checked the data, ran simulations, and consulted historical records. Every anomaly, every unusual reading pointed to a startling conclusion: humanity had been discovered. The hidden empire, the silent network of human civilization, had been observed by an advanced civilization capable of scanning the depths of space with incredible precision. The reaction among the leadership was calm, but urgent. They understood that panic would serve no purpose. Every decision now had to be deliberate, precise, and strategic. Orders were given to keep fleets in ready positions, to monitor all communication channels, and to ensure that every outpost remained operational and secure. Humans had prepared for decades for the possibility of discovery, and now that moment had arrived. The difference was that they had to act carefully, because revealing their full capabilities too soon could provoke the unknown civilization into aggression. Reconnaissance ships were sent out to intercept and observe the approaching fleets. The people on these ships had trained their entire lives for scenarios like this. They studied the data constantly, predicting movement patterns, energy outputs, and possible strategies. Communication with command centers on distant stations was slow but steady, allowing them to relay critical information. The tension was palpable, yet the humans aboard these ships maintained discipline. Every calculation, every adjustment, and every observation mattered. Lives and the survival of the empire depended on it. Meanwhile, humans across the empire experienced a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Life continued on the stations and colonies, but the knowledge that they were no longer hidden changed everything. Conversations were quieter, routines more precise, and everyone understood the stakes. Families, friends, and colleagues relied on each other more than ever. Morale became a key focus because fear could easily disrupt the delicate balance the empire had built. Leaders made sure to communicate progress and updates, reminding everyone that preparation and unity were humanity's greatest strengths. As the external fleets drew closer, Humans began to understand the capabilities of the civilization that had discovered them. They were fast, precise, and highly coordinated. Their energy signatures suggested powerful technology, perhaps capable of weapons and propulsion beyond anything humans had yet encountered. The intelligence gathered from observation revealed patterns of analysis, almost as if the outsiders were studying humanity carefully, calculating every possibility before making a move. Humanity faced a difficult dilemma: to act openly and demonstrate strength, or to continue hiding and risk being discovered in a vulnerable moment. Every leader, scientist, and strategist discussed scenarios for days. The decisions had to balance secrecy, diplomacy, and defense. If humans revealed too much, it could trigger conflict. If they remained hidden for too long, the outsiders might interpret it as weakness or deception. The choice required patience, wisdom, and courage. Ultimately, the decision was made to show controlled strength, a demonstration that humanity was capable of defending itself without revealing the full extent of its power. Fleets moved into strategic positions, cloaking or partially revealing themselves as needed. Communication signals were sent in careful bursts, enough to be noticed but not fully understood. It was a delicate dance, testing both the unknown civilization and humanity's ability to respond strategically. The first direct encounter happened sooner than expected. A small squadron from the external civilization approached one of the human colonies. They did not attack immediately. Instead, they sent scanning probes and conducted energy readings, testing defenses and observing responses. Humans responded in kind, deploying countermeasures and defensive maneuvers without fully exposing the Empire's capabilities. It was a tense game of strategy and observation, with both sides testing limits while trying to understand each other. Inside the Empire, humans experienced a mix of fear, excitement, and determination. For some, it was the first time they truly felt the weight of the hidden civilization's existence. They had built fleets, stations, and technology capable of surviving in extreme conditions, but now they had to apply it in real-world scenarios, under the scrutiny of an unknown and highly advanced civilization. Training, preparation, and teamwork became critical. Every person played a role, no matter how small. Engineers repaired systems, strategists predicted movements, and crews manned ships with unwavering focus. Communication channels became vital, not just for commands, but for maintaining morale and coordination. Updates flowed constantly, relaying data from reconnaissance ships, colonies, and distant stations. Leaders emphasized calm, patience, and unity. They reminded everyone that fear could lead to mistakes, and mistakes in space could be catastrophic. Humans relied on decades of training, preparation, and experience to remain disciplined, even as the unknown fleets continued to approach. As the encounters continued, it became clear that the external civilization was highly intelligent and cautious. Their probes, fleets, and scanning systems suggested they could detect even minor anomalies in energy patterns and movement. They were studying humans carefully, analyzing every response, every adjustment, and every sign of strength. The realization reinforced a critical lesson. The hidden empire was strong, but it had to remain adaptable. Humans could not rely solely on technology or secrecy. They had to be strategic, clever, and united. Despite the tension, humans found moments of resilience and hope. People celebrated small successes, such as successfully hiding key ships, intercepting probes, or interpreting signals from the unknown fleets. These victories, though minor in the grand scale, reinforced morale and reminded humans of their ingenuity and capability. It was proof that even when confronted by forces far more advanced, humanity's preparation, teamwork, and determination could make a difference. The external civilization eventually made indirect contact through signals and probes. Humans responded cautiously, sending messages that conveyed intelligence, awareness, and strategic capability without revealing full power. The interactions were tense but civil, like two carefully matched opponents testing each other. Humans realized that this first contact could determine the future of the hidden empire. It was not a war yet, but it was a warning that the era of secrecy was ending. Humanity had been discovered, and now every move counted. Inside the empire, people reflected on how far they had come. Decades of quiet work, exploration, and preparation had led to this moment. Humans had transformed from an unseen species into a civilization capable of strategic defense in space. The discovery, though frightening, also proved that the empire they had built was real, capable, and resilient. They had prepared for decades for this exact scenario, and now they were putting all their knowledge, skill, and ingenuity into action. Even in the face of uncertainty, humans remained united. They understood that their survival depended not just on technology, but on collaboration, trust, and courage. Crews on ships, scientists in labs, and leaders on distant stations worked together seamlessly, each contributing in ways that would have been impossible alone. The hidden empire was no longer invisible, but its strength had always been in the people who made it real. As the first direct contact continued, humans began to understand the motivations of the external civilization. They were cautious, analytical, and deliberate. They did not attack, but they were clearly aware of the empire's existence and capabilities. Every move, every response was an exercise in understanding the other. Humans realized that this encounter was as much a test of intelligence and strategy as it was of power. The universe had finally noticed humanity, and it was a test to see if humans were ready to step onto a larger stage. Even as tension grew, life inside the empire adapted. People continued their routines, maintained equipment, and supported one another. They shared stories of past challenges, discussed strategies for the future, and reminded each other of the decades of preparation that had led to this moment. The hidden empire had been built quietly, but now it had to prove itself openly. Humanity was no longer a secret. The universe had discovered them, and it was time to show that the empire in the shadows was strong, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. The discovery marked the end of an era. The hidden empire, once unseen and untouched, now faced the reality of being recognized by an external civilization. It was a pivotal moment in human history, a turning point that would test every lesson learned, every skill developed, and every decision made over decades. Humanity had survived this long because of secrecy, preparation, and unity. Now those same qualities would be put to the ultimate test, and even in the face of uncertainty, fear, and the unknown, one truth remained clear: the empire in the shadows W. The first clash came suddenly, almost without warning. After weeks of careful observation, strategic maneuvers, and cautious communication, humanity's hidden empire was forced into action. Reconnaissance fleets had identified an aggressive approach by the external civilization. It was clear that the situation was no longer just about being discovered. This was a test of strength, skill, and survival. Humans had prepared for decades for such a moment, but the reality of actual engagement was far more intense than anyone had imagined. The empire responded with precision. Fleets moved into defensive positions. Outposts activated energy shields, and automated systems prepared weapons and countermeasures. Every human aboard every ship knew their role and the stakes. Years of training, simulations, and preparation suddenly became the difference between survival and annihilation. Even the youngest crew members who had grown up on orbital stations understood that the empire they had helped build was facing its first real trial. The clash began with small, calculated strikes. Humanity did not attack recklessly.
Instead, they demonstrated power, readiness, and strategy.
Advanced fleets moved in synchronized patterns, cloaking or revealing themselves to confuse and assess the approaching forces. Automated drones tested enemy defenses, while communication signals sent subtle warnings without revealing the Empire's full capability. It was a careful dance, a show of strength meant to protect rather than provoke. Despite careful planning, the reality of battle brought fear. Humans were forced to think and act quickly, responding to unexpected maneuvers by the external fleets. Some ships were damaged by unforeseen energy surges, and some outposts experienced temporary system failures. Every moment required focus, teamwork, and trust in one another. The Empire had been built on preparation, but nothing could fully simulate the pressure of a real conflict. Yet humanity adapted. Crew members worked tirelessly, repairing systems while still engaging in maneuvers, coordinating with other ships, and monitoring energy readings. Strategists recalculated patterns in real time, predicting enemy movements and adjusting positions accordingly. Engineers found innovative solutions to unexpected problems, using both advanced technology and human ingenuity to keep the Empire's defenses operational. In the midst of chaos, humans proved that their strength was not just in machines but in people. The external civilization soon realized that humanity was not a passive target. Their probing attacks met resistance, strategic countermeasures, and unexpected maneuvers. They were forced to slow their approach, reassess their understanding of human capabilities, and adapt to an opponent that had spent decades preparing for moments like this. Humanity's silent empire, built in shadows, was suddenly visible and formidable. Even in the heat of the first engagement, humans remained remarkably calm. Teams aboard ships and stations communicated efficiently, coordinating attacks, defenses, and repairs. Each person understood that panic could lead to mistakes, and mistakes in space could be catastrophic. Leaders emphasized focus, discipline, and trust, ensuring that every crew member acted with precision. The Empire's survival depended not on fear, but on human skill, intelligence, and courage. As the skirmishes continued, humans began to gain a clearer understanding of the external civilization's strengths and weaknesses. Their fleets were advanced, their energy weapons powerful, and their tactics intelligent, but they were not infallible. Observing patterns allowed humans to predict movements, exploit gaps, and create strategic advantages. It was not about defeating the enemy outright, at least not yet, but about demonstrating resilience, protecting the Empire, and buying time to assess the situation. In the midst of conflict, there were moments of quiet heroism. Engineers worked in dangerous areas of ships to repair critical systems. Pilots performed daring maneuvers to protect weaker vessels. Scientists monitored energy fluctuations, providing vital information to strategists. Every person contributed in ways that mattered, proving that the hidden empire was as much about human ingenuity and bravery as it was about technology. Even under fire, humans showed determination, courage, and unity. The external civilization seemed surprised by humanity's resilience. Their initial assumption that humans could be overwhelmed or intimidated proved wrong. Every maneuver, every countermeasure, every coordinated defense challenged their expectations. Humanity had learned to survive in extreme conditions, and now they applied that knowledge strategically in real time. It was a lesson that even the most advanced civilization had to acknowledge. Humans were not passive and they were not weak. Amid the tactical movements, communication remained a vital tool. Humans used encrypted signals, deceptive patterns, and careful broadcasts to maintain control over the situation. Some messages conveyed warnings, while others subtly indicated capability without revealing full strength. Every exchange, every transmission, was part of a carefully orchestrated strategy to manage conflict without escalating into full-scale war. It was a delicate balance, and humans had to think several steps ahead at all times. As the engagement unfolded, humans discovered that the external civilization had underestimated one key element: adaptability. Humans could learn quickly, adjust strategies on the fly, and use unconventional methods to gain advantages. Fleets split and reformed, automated drones acted independently but intelligently, and energy shields were manipulated in innovative ways to counter unexpected attacks. Humanity's ability to think creatively under pressure became a decisive factor in the conflict. Despite the danger, the Empire's leadership remained focused on the bigger picture. They knew that this first clash was not just a battle, it was a message. It demonstrated that humanity had survived in the shadows, prepared for decades and capable of defending itself against forces far beyond anything seen publicly. Every maneuver, every defensive action, and every strategic decision was a statement. The hidden empire was real, and it could not be ignored. Over time, the skirmishes began to shift in humanity's favor. Not because they were stronger, but because they were prepared, coordinated, and resourceful. They used knowledge of their own systems, familiarity with space conditions, and clever tactics to counter the external civilization's advances. Small victories boosted morale, reinforced confidence, and proved that the Empire's preparation was not in vain. Humans had learned that survival depended not just on firepower, but on intelligence, creativity, and unity. The battle also revealed the true nature of the Empire's people. Humans who had trained their whole lives in the shadows of secrecy showed extraordinary resilience under pressure. Crews worked in harmony, anticipating needs and solving problems before they became critical. Scientists and engineers applied theoretical knowledge in real time, creating solutions that saved lives and maintained the Empire's strength. It was a testament to the human spirit, a reminder that preparation, courage, and collaboration could overcome even overwhelming odds. Amid the conflict, humans also began to understand their opponent better. The external civilization was disciplined, intelligent, and capable of rapid adaptation. But they were not invincible. Their reliance on predictable patterns, their assumptions about human behavior, and their unfamiliarity with the hidden empire's tactics created opportunities that humans exploited with precision. It became clear that victory, or at least survival, was possible if humans continued to act strategically, work together, and maintain focus under pressure. By the end of the first real clash, both sides had learned valuable lessons. The external civilization realized that humanity was not an insignificant species to be overlooked. Humans had survived and defended themselves despite being discovered unexpectedly. The hidden empire had transitioned from secrecy to visible strength, proving that decades of preparation, planning, and innovation had created a force capable of standing against even the most advanced threats. The humans themselves were changed. The first engagement tested everything they had learned, pushed their limits, and revealed the full extent of their resilience. Crews returned to stations. Engineers repaired damaged systems, and strategists began planning for future encounters. The Empire had survived its first test, and the lessons learned would shape every decision, every strategy, and every advancement moving forward. Yet, even in victory, humans understood that the danger was far from over. The first clash had revealed the capabilities of the external civilization, but it had also shown that they were persistent, intelligent, and capable of learning from every encounter. The hidden empire had survived, but survival was just the beginning. Humans knew that they would have to continue adapting, innovating, and preparing for what came next. The first clash was also a reminder of why the empire had been built in the shadows in the first place. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, creating systems, training people, and building a civilization capable of survival. The encounter proved that those efforts were necessary. It was a moment of validation, but also a warning. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and filled with forces that would test the human race. The hidden empire could survive, but only if humans continued to act with intelligence, courage, and unity. As humans reflected on the battle, they also looked to the future. The first clash had been a test, but it was far from new. The aftermath of the first real clash left humanity with a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and determination. The hidden empire had survived its first confrontation with an external civilization, but the experience had been a powerful lesson. Every crew member, every engineer, and every strategist understood that this was only the beginning. Survival was no longer about secrecy alone. It was about strategy, resilience, and the ability to face the universe openly while still protecting the people, systems, and values they had built over decades. Humans returned to their stations and fleets to assess damage, repair systems, and analyze every piece of data gathered during the engagement. Engineers worked tirelessly, repairing damaged ships, recalibrating energy shields, and ensuring that life support systems remained stable. Scientists studied the behavior of the external civilization, noting their tactics, energy outputs, and strategic patterns. Every detail mattered, because each observation provided critical insight into what humans might face in future encounters. Leadership within the empire focused on morale as much as strategy. People were exhausted, yet they remained committed. Leaders emphasized unity, reminding everyone that the first clash had proven something extraordinary. Humans, working together, could survive even against forces far more advanced. Small celebrations occurred quietly. Victories were acknowledged, achievements recognized, and resilience honored. It was a reminder that even in the harshness of space, human spirit and determination could thrive. Communication across the empire became even more critical. Coordinating stations, fleets, and outposts over vast distances required precision and patience. Updates flowed constantly. Some provided logistical instructions, others strategic insights, and still others served to reassure civilians and crews that they were safe, capable, and part of something larger than themselves. Trust and clarity became the backbone of the empire, ensuring that every human, no matter their role, knew they were contributing to the survival of the species. As humans analyzed the engagement, they realized the external civilization was more cautious than aggressive. Their probing strikes had been calculated, not reckless. They seemed to be studying humanity, testing limits and understanding capabilities. This suggested intelligence, patience, and strategy, traits that demanded respect. Humans understood that any future encounters would require even greater focus, planning, and adaptability. The first clash had been a wake-up call. The universe was vast, and there were civilizations capable of testing the limits of humanity in ways they had never imagined. The Empire took steps to strengthen its defenses while maintaining readiness for diplomacy or negotiation. Fleets were repositioned strategically, energy shields reinforced, and sensor arrays expanded to detect anomalies at greater distances. Automated drones were upgraded for both defense and reconnaissance. Systems that had been dormant or secondary became active, adding layers of protection to ensure that the Empire could survive not just one encounter, but many. Humans understood that survival required foresight, innovation, and continuous adaptation. At the same time, humans reflected on the deeper meaning of the conflict. The first clash had been terrifying, yes, but it had also demonstrated the strength, ingenuity, and resilience of the hidden empire. Humans had proven that they were capable not just of surviving, but of thriving under extreme conditions. Every victory, every clever maneuver, and every repaired system was a testament to the collaborative effort of people who had dedicated their lives to building something extraordinary. Humanity also began to see opportunities in the encounter. The external civilization's cautious behavior suggested that negotiation or communication might be possible in the future. Humans realized that they did not have to approach the universe solely through conflict. They could demonstrate intelligence, diplomacy, and adaptability, showing that the Empire in the shadows was capable of both defense and understanding. The first clash had taught them not just how to survive, but how to begin shaping relationships beyond Earth. Communities across the Empire adapted to the new reality. People who had grown up believing they lived in isolated safety now understood that the universe was aware of them. Children trained in sciences and survival skills became more aware of strategy, communication, and observation. Adults continued their work, now with a heightened sense of purpose, knowing that every task contributed not just to survival, but to humanity's standing in the cosmos. Life, though challenging, continued with renewed focus and meaning. Humans also reflected on the lessons learned from fear, fatigue, and uncertainty. The first clash had shown the importance of preparation, yes, but it had also emphasized flexibility. Systems, strategies, and plans had to be adaptable to unexpected conditions. Humans realized that success would depend not on rigid procedures, but on the ability to improvise, collaborate, and remain calm under pressure. The Empire's strength lay not in technology alone, but in the people who could use it wisely, quickly, and effectively. As time passed, the Empire grew stronger, both materially and spiritually. Ships were upgraded, new outposts established, and fleets expanded to cover more territory. But humans also invested in training, education, and morale. The first clash had shown that human spirit, courage, and ingenuity were as valuable as energy shields, propulsion systems, or advanced drones. Every human, from the youngest apprentice to the most experienced commander, became part of a civilization capable of surviving, adapting, and thriving in a universe full of unknown challenges. The external civilization remained a presence on the edges of human awareness. Humans monitored their movements, studied their patterns, and interpreted their signals. They remained cautious, knowing that the first clash had revealed intelligence and capability that could pose a real threat if provoked. Yet humans were no longer the passive species they had been. They had proven themselves capable, resourceful, and united. The hidden empire, once a secret, had emerged as a civilization ready to face whatever came next. Even in the quiet moments after the first clash, humans celebrated their resilience. Engineers repaired systems, scientists analyzed data, and crews shared stories of courage and ingenuity. These stories became part of the Empire's culture, a record of how humans working together in secrecy and danger had survived their first encounter with an unknown civilization. It was a reminder that even in the vast, lonely expanses of space, humanity could endure, adapt, and thrive. Over time, the Empire began to look beyond immediate survival. Humans explored strategies for expansion, diplomacy, and deeper understanding of the external civilization. They realized that while conflict was possible, Cooperation and communication might also be achievable. The lessons of the first clash shaped these strategies. Intelligence, patience, and adaptability would guide humanity's next steps. The Empire had survived, but now it was learning how to thrive in a universe where it was no longer hidden. The people of the Empire understood that the first clash was a turning point. It had revealed vulnerabilities, strengths, and possibilities. Humans were no longer isolated in the shadows. They were visible, capable, and resilient. Every fleet, every outpost, and every human played a role in ensuring that the Empire could survive future encounters, whether through defense, diplomacy, or strategic innovation. Humanity had transitioned from secrecy to strength, and the first clash was the beginning of a new era. Communities adapted to this new era. Life on stations and colonies continued, but with heightened awareness. Children were educated in strategy and communication, adults trained in both survival and leadership, and crews became experts at working together under pressure. Humans had built a civilization capable of surviving decades in secrecy. Now they were learning to operate effectively in the open, knowing that the universe was watching. The hidden empire had become more than a secret project or a collection of hidden stations. It had evolved into a living, breathing human civilization. Its people had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. The first clash had tested them in ways that preparation alone could not simulate. It had demanded courage, ingenuity, and trust, and humans had risen to the challenge. As humans reflected on what had happened, they realized that survival was only the beginning. The Empire had endured its first confrontation, but the universe was vast and full of unknowns. The experience had taught them humility, strategy, and the importance of adaptability. Humans knew that future challenges could be even more complex, but they also understood that they were ready. They had proven that a civilization built in the shadows could survive discovery, adapt to new circumstances, and continue to thrive. In the end, the first clash became a symbol of human resilience. It showed that even against unknown and powerful forces, humanity could endure, learn, and grow. The Empire had emerged stronger, not just in technology or fleets, but in spirit, collaboration, and understanding. Humans had moved from secrecy to visibility, from preparation to action, and from fear to confidence. The Empire in the shadows had survived, adapted, and evolved. It had proven that humans were capable of more than survival. They were capable of thriving in the face of unknown dangers, of learning from experience, and of shaping their own destiny in the universe.